Are we alone in the universe? It's a question that's fascinated people for as long as we've looked up at the stars. And you know what? You sent us a ton of stuff about this articles, transcripts, even some good old fashioned UFO stories. So, in this deep dive, we are going to tackle the big question: is there life beyond Earth? And we're going to dig into some seriously interesting perspectives on this whole thing.
What always gets me is this isn't just about little green man anymore. The universe is mind-bogglingly huge, right? Like billions and billions of stars and planets. To think that Earth is the only place with life, it just seems statistically impossible.
Right. It's like looking at a beach, finding one tiny grain of sand and being like, yep, this is it, the only one. And speaking of huge numbers, one of the things you sent was about the Planetary Society, which is all about getting everyone involved in space exploration, but they also talk about how many galaxies and stars are out there. I mean, it's almost impossible to wrap your head around.
And here's where it gets even crazier. Think about it. Each star could have planets orbiting it, planets with their own moons, and even if the chances of life are super slim on any single planet, when you multiply those odds by just how many possibilities are out there, well, you can't help but wonder.
Okay, so we've got this universe that's practically bursting with planets, but we're not exactly talking about bumping into other civilizations left and right, are we? So what exactly are we looking for out there?
It's easy to picture aliens like in the movies, but honestly, the most likely life we'd find out there, probably microscopic. We're talking bacteria, single-celled organisms. That's the kind of life that thrived on Earth for billions of years before anything more complex came along.
Okay, so maybe not as exciting as having a chat with ET over coffee, but it makes sense. Life starts small, and who knows what those little life forms could become over time. I mean, look at extremophiles here on Earth clinging to life in the harshest environments imaginable. Makes you wonder what's possible on other planets.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why those scientists who study the possibility of life beyond Earth, astrobiologists, they get super stoked about things like finding water on other planets or certain gases. Those are like little clues.
Right, those biosignatures, like a little chemical message saying, hey, something interesting might be happening over here. We haven't found definitive proof of even microbes on another planet, though, right?
Not yet, but the search is definitely heating up. We've got those rovers on Mars sniffing around for signs of past life, and there are even missions in the works to explore places like Europa and Enceladus,
Those are.
moons of Jupiter and Saturn. And they might have oceans of liquid water under their icy shells. Imagine that.
Okay, so we've got this search for tiny life, which honestly, if we're being real, is probably the most likely scenario. But you also sent over some really interesting stuff about, actual encounters, people seeing objects in the sky that just don't have any easy explanation.
And that's where things get really interesting. We have to balance the scientific approach with being open to the unknown. Because sometimes the universe throws us a curveball. Like, remember that object we call Umoa?
Oh, yeah, that's the one everyone was talking about a while back, right?
Yeah.
The first thing we've ever seen just passing through our solar system, and it came from another star system, which is already kind of mind-blowing.
Like something out of science fiction. Astronomers were stumped by its shape, this weird, elongated thing. Some people said it looked like a cigar, others said a space pizza, and it was tumbling through space in this really strange way that nobody could quite figure out.
One of the articles you sent called it racing along as if propelled by an extra force. Don't comets do that, though? They've got those tails of gas that act like a kind of rocket.
You'd think, right? Except Oumuamua, no visible tail, no signs of anything being released like that.
So what's the explanation?
Well, that's where the debate started. Most scientists, they tried to find explanations that made sense with what we know about physics. Like maybe it was a weird type of comet made of something unusual, or maybe a hydrogen iceberg slowly evaporating away.
Makes sense.
Right. All perfectly reasonable.
Except.
Except, then there's Avi Loeb, this Harvard astrophysicist who isn't afraid to think outside the box. He basically says, hold on, what if Oumuamua wasn't a natural object at all?
Whoa. You think he means?
He looked at how it was accelerating its strange movements, and he proposed this wild idea. What if it's a light sail, like this super thin object designed to be pushed along by sunlight?
So, like sailing on sunshine. I mean, that sounds like some seriously advanced tech. That's straight out of Star Wars.
Right, I know. But I'm guessing not everyone in the scientific community was quite ready to buy the whole alien spaceship theory. Let's just say not everyone was on board right away. A lot of scientists said, look, it's a big jump to go from we don't totally get this thing to it's aliens. They wanted to stick with those more, normal explanations and pointed out there wasn't exactly a ton of hard proof.
Yeah, which is fair. Extraordinary claims need extraordinary evidence, right? But I have to say, I kind of love that he put the idea out there. Really makes you think about the universe in a whole new way. So where do you land on this whole Oumuamua thing? Just a weird rock or something more?
Honestly,
Mm-hmm.
I'm good with keeping an open mind. Maybe we'll never know for sure about Oumuamua. But you know what I find really cool about all this? It reminds us that our solar system, it's not this closed-off little corner of the universe. It's part of this gigantic, interconnected galaxy, and there's stuff zipping through all the time. Who knows what else might be passing through our cosmic neighborhood right now?
That is the kind of thought that keeps you looking up at night. And speaking of seeing things in the sky, you sent over some absolutely wild accounts from military pilots who say they've seen UFOs. And what struck me, these are just, random people who saw a funny light in the sky. These are trained observers. Their whole job is identifying things in the air, and even they are seeing things they can't explain.
Exactly. And a lot of times they describe these objects doing things that seem physically impossible. Like in that Nimitz Tic Tac incident back in 2004.
Yeah.
This wasn't just one pilot, it was multiple pilots and radar operators all watching this thing.
Oh, yeah, I remember reading about that one. Shaped like a giant tic tac, hence the name. What got me was how it moved, or I guess didn't move. Didn't they say it was like blinking, like just jumping from one spot to another instantly?
That's how they described it. One of the pilots, Commander David Fravor, he said it was like a ping pong ball bouncing off a wall. Just these crazy fast changes in direction and altitude. And get this thing was being tracked on radar. Multiple systems, including the Navy cruiser's Aegis system, which is really, really sophisticated.
So it wasn't just like a visual glitch or something.
Doesn't seem like it. And there's more. So after they lost sight of it near the water, it apparently pops up again at their rendezvous point, 60 miles away, in less than a minute.
60 miles in a minute. How? How is that even possible? No wonder those pilots were left speechless. Didn't they even scramble another jet with one of those infrared cameras to try and get a better look at it?
It did. And that footage, which eventually, made its way out there, it shows this blurry white thing moving in ways that nobody can really explain. It became a big deal in the whole UFO debate because if it was just a plane or a weather balloon that they misidentified, how do you explain what they saw and how it was moving?
Yeah, it's hard to argue with that kind of eyewitness account, especially with the radar data to back it up. And this Nimitz thing, this wasn't the only time something like this happened, right? Didn't you send me something about a Japan Airlines flight over Alaska?
That's right. Japan Airlines Flight 1628. The pilots on that flight, they said they saw this gigantic glowing object just keeping pace with their plane. And again, we're talking experienced pilots, people who know what they're looking at, and they were clearly pretty shaken up by what they saw.
It makes you think, how many other pilots have seen stuff like this but haven't said anything? Maybe because they were worried about people laughing at them or, causing problems for their career?
It's a real concern.
Yeah.
For a long time, there was this stigma against reporting UFOs, even in the military. But these accounts we've been talking about, especially coming from credible sources like pilots and radar operators, they've really changed things. People are starting to take this a lot more seriously now.
So if even the government is starting to admit that something weird is going on in our skies, what are they doing about it? You sent some stuff about official investigations into UFOs. Tell me about those.
Well, it's a long and complicated history. It goes back to the 1950s with Project Blue Book. That was the Air Force's first official UFO investigation.
And what did they find? Figure out what these UFOs were.
In the end, they said most sightings could be explained as, people misidentifying aircraft, weather stuff, that kind of thing. But there was this small percentage of cases, the really intriguing ones, that they just couldn't explain with what they knew then.
So not exactly proof of aliens, but also not nothing. Did they keep investigating after that?
They shut Project Blue Book down in 1969. And for a while, they were saying they weren't really looking into UFOs anymore. But turns out that wasn't the whole story.
What do you mean?
Seems there were still people and groups within the government keeping an eye on things behind the scenes. One of the things you sent over was an article about Leslie Kean. She's a journalist who's done some seriously amazing investigative work on this.
Oh, yeah. She's the one who really blew the lid off that whole secret Pentagon UFO program, right?
Exactly. She and other researchers, organizations like NARCAP, the National Aviation Reporting Center on Anomalous Phenomena, they've been putting in the work, gathering data, talking to witnesses, and really pushing the government to be more transparent. And you know what? It's actually working.
So we went from, total silence to this slow drip of info. What happened?
A lot of it goes back to 2017, when the New York Times ran that huge story about ATIP.
That was the Pentagon's secret UFO program, right?
Yep. Suddenly, it was front-page news, this whole thing about the government looking into these unexplained things in the sky, and they've been doing it for years.
And that's when people really started paying attention, right?
Yeah, big time. The public wanted answers, politicians started demanding answers, and finally, in 2020, the Pentagon created this whole task force, the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force, specifically to investigate these sightings.
Which brings us to that Pentagon report on UAPs from 2021. What was that like, seeing an actual government report that basically says, yeah, we don't know what some of this stuff is?
It was pretty wild. People had been waiting a long time for something like that. The report was pretty clear. There are definitely sightings they can't explain. They even said that some of these things, they seem to be doing things that we just don't understand in terms of how they fly. But they were also careful, not to jump to conclusions.
So the classic line, we need more data.
Pretty much. But still, it felt like a big step. The report actually called for more research, being more open about things, and finding better ways to gather data. That's a pretty big deal.
It does seem like things are different now. People are more open-minded, more willing to actually have these conversations. It's not this fringe thing anymore.
Definitely. And you're seeing that in the research, too. There are scientists now who are really digging into this, using rigorous scientific methods and data analysis to try and figure out what's going on. People like Avi Loeb with his Galileo project.
Makes sense. If we're ever going to figure this out, we need solid proof, not just theories and blurry pictures.
Right. And it's not just about knowing what these things are, it's figuring out how they behave. If some of these objects are using tech that's way beyond anything we have, well, that changes everything. Our understanding of physics, engineering, our place in the cosmos.
Okay, so let's say, just for a minute, that some of these UFOs really are, extraterrestrial. That's a big if, but let's go with it. What would that mean for us?
Whoa. Now that's a question that'll keep you up at night. It would be a total game changer. It would mean rethinking everything we thought we knew about life, intelligence, what's possible out there.
I'll say. And it kind of makes you wonder, why haven't they made contact? If they're so advanced, why all the secrecy? It's like that whole where is everybody question.
Exactly. The Fermi paradox. It's one of those great mysteries. Maybe they have made contact, and we just haven't figured it out yet. Maybe they're watching, waiting for us to reach a certain point before they say hi. Or maybe they have their reasons.
It's kind of mind-blowing when you really think about it. Like, we're just starting to get a glimpse of what might be out there. Who knows what we'll discover next?
That's what's so amazing. There are so many wonders in the universe, and some of them might be closer than we realize. Who knows what's waiting to be discovered, just beyond what we can imagine.
Well, I, for one, am ready to find out. And who knows, maybe someday we'll be having a very different conversation. No more speculation, no more blurry images, just, actual knowledge, real contact.
Now that would be incredible. But until then, we keep searching, keep asking questions, and keep our minds open. Because the universe, it's got a way of surprising us.
It definitely does. So next time you're looking up at the stars, remember, what we see is just this tiny sliver of what's really out there. And maybe, just maybe, something or someone is looking back. This has been a wild ride. Thanks for sending in all this amazing stuff and for coming along with us on this deep dive into the unknown.